All right. So we're going to do something a little bit different tonight. I know we just had the 2023 NFL draft. Everyone's like, we're still just trying to figure out what we're doing with this year's class. But we're like, look, we're not waiting. We're not chilling. We're going on to next year. All right. So we're looking at 2024. All right. So Dennis and I, we're going to go back and forth. Now, mention it before he came on. Don't hold us to this. All right. This is still early. We're still learning things about this class.
We could
We're
be
still learning
lying
things.
or we could be wrong. Whatever.
That's right. That's right. So, but we want to familiarize you guys with some of these names. Some of these names are going to be pretty obvious. There's going to be some other new ones that you haven't heard of. But Dennis, when I was doing some of my research, I ended up tweeting out about this as well. But in doing some of my research for this mock draft that we're going to do, I realized you're going to love this class at wide receiver, Dennis.
Because there's some big dudes. You talking about Michael Wilson, are you?
They're huge. I mean, one of these guys is 6'5" and the other one's 6'7". Like, these guys are monsters. So for a year that we had covering Josh Downs and Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison and Tank Dell and all of these smaller, slider receivers, we've got some big boys in the 2024 draft. Doesn't always mean they're going to pan out, but they at least got some size.
For my Donald Parham shares.
All right, so Dennis, I'm going to allow you to have the first pick. This is a super flex draft. I think that makes the pick pretty obvious, but I'm going to let you decide if it is or not.
So the homer in me, you see the Buckeye jerseys behind me, really would love to go Marvin Harrison.
Right.
But you just can't. Caleb Williams is – I think Caleb Williams may have been the only guy, if he had come out this year, if he was eligible to come out this year, he may have been the only guy drafted ahead of Bijan Robinson.
Yep.
So I'm going to go Caleb Williams at the 101. I think that a lot of stuff has to go wrong over the next 12 months for him to not be the 101 in the NFL draft and in your fantasy drafts for Superflex.
Yeah, I ended up finding myself watching a lot more Travis Dye tape than I originally anticipated, simply because I kept getting to watch Caleb Williams.
Right.
Travis Dye ended up being the second lowest rated running back in this class for me. But I got to watch Caleb Williams.
You got to watch a lot of Caleb Williams.
Right. So all of a sudden I'm like, I just watched like 5 or 6 games of Travis Dye. I didn't plan on doing that, but it was worth it because I got to watch Caleb Williams, and he does. I mean, we've heard this a lot over the past few years of, and you always want to comp players to guys that are successful in the NFL. We've heard a lot of next Tyreek Hill. We've heard a lot of next, this guy. And we've heard a lot of next Patrick Mahomes. But gosh, does this guy look like the next Patrick Mahomes? Right. I mean,
he looks like what Patrick Mahomes looks like if he was mobile, like really mobile.
And that's the thing. I think he's a better athlete than Patrick Mahomes is, which Mahomes is no slouch, especially when it comes to playoff time. I mean, he can get up and move, and he can get you some yards with his legs. But, man, Caleb Williams, just size, speed, arm, all of it.
So the one caveat that I'm going to throw out there is he's listed at 6'1". So there's probably a good chance he's going to measure at 6 foot, but he's clocking the scale at 218. So if he checks in at 6 foot, 215, I think that eliminates a lot of the concerns that we had with Bryce Young.
Right.
So, and he's just got a dynamic arm, runs great. And so I think, hopefully they're not fudging the numbers too much for us.
Right. I'm hoping that as well. That is one thing that's like, I could see that being problematic. Now, I shouldn't say problematic. That's the wrong word. I could see that being the one like small ding in his armor, but still, we're not talking about Kyler Murray and Bryce Young size. We're talking about a solid 2 inches or so taller than that and much thicker as well. So I think we're in good shape here. I'm not going to lie. I had a really hard time because I assumed you would take Caleb Williams. I had a really hard time deciding what to do it to, because I do think that there is another quarterback in this draft that is really, really good. But I am not confident that he's bulletproof. And this early, I want to take the bulletproof guys. And Marvin Harrison Jr. is as close to bulletproof as I have covered at wide receiver. Now, granted, I'm not one of these guys that, I've covered 27 years of the NFL draft. And, I'm not there yet. But
when we talk to those guys, they're all saying this about Marvin Harrison Jr., right?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. Even I remember listening to guys like Joe Klatt last year saying he's the best wide receiver in college football, and he can't even come out yet. Marvin Harrison Jr. is that good. He's already the best one. And I don't think anyone would disagree with that. Had he been able to come out this year, I think he would have been a top 5 pick in this class. I think he's that talented. I think he's that good. Look, we've had Justin Jefferson come out. We've had Jamar Chase come out in the past few years. Like, good players. Smith come out. As a raw prospect, just looking at their tape, I would take Marvin Harrison Jr. above all of those guys as prospects. Now, knowing what we know now, where they land and, what numbers they put up, obviously, it's a little easier to just say, well, if I know for sure I'm going to get Justin Jefferson for 3 years putting up those numbers, I'll just take him. Yeah. But just on a prospect grade alone, I think he's the best one out of all of them.
I think the only real concern with him is if he goes to the combine or on his pro day and runs a 4.6.
Sure.
And even then, I think we've seen enough talent that it's not going to ding him that hard, because he's 6'3" and 225 pounds, and he moves really, really well. That being said, I think he's going to be pretty comfortably in the 4.5s when he runs, maybe even a 4.4. I mean, he doesn't get caught, but he's also, he's just phenomenal. I agree. You can't really go wrong picking him at the 102.
Yeah, I wanted to be at a spot where I insulated myself from the risk. And look, it's a super flex draft, so there's quarterbacks that were tempting, but I had to go with Marvin Harrison Jr. So that puts you on the clock at 103 here. Dennis, you taking a quarterback, or are you going somewhere else?
The combine is going to play a role in where I'm looking here.
Yeah.
Because I am becoming a noted anti-tight end guru. So I think you have to have an exceptional, I think, physical profile for me to draft you as a tight end. Like, I'm in 2 drafts right now. I haven't drafted a tight end in 2 rookie drafts into the 4th round. And so Brock Bowers, just the way he's putting up numbers is really tempting. Now, I think let me find him here. He's listed at 6'4" and 230. When you watch him, he doesn't look, he's not a big dude.
No.
So he's probably going to measure 6'2.5" maybe. And to be considered a tight end that plays a lot, he's going to have to put on 15 pounds, 20 pounds. So he's be a slot receiver, move tight ends, right. Slot receiver. He's going to be able to win against defensive backs. Probably, as long as he's getting safeties, he'll be bigger than cornerbacks. It looks pretty good for him. But it's a super flex, and Drake Maye is sitting there, 6'5".
All that lead up to take Drake Maye?
Yeah, it's 6'5", 220. If he puts up a season like he did last year, 4,300 yards, 38 touchdowns, 66% completion rate. If he does that again this year, I think in a super flex, you got to take him over even Brock Bowers, even Trayveon Henderson. I just think that in Superflex, you take the quarterback that projects to be a prototypical quarterback. I don't know that he's necessarily, looks like he ran the ball 184 times last year? 14. No, that's 14 games. Yeah, it says he ran for almost 700 yards last year.
Yeah, he's a good athlete too.
Yeah, so that puts him in that mix up there, and I think you got to take him at unless he tanks this year and has a Spencer Rattler third year kind of thing and just falls on his face and completes 55% of his passes. I think Drake Maye is the pick there.
No, you absolutely made the right pick. I was really hoping you were going to go with Brock Bowers because I was going to hop all over Drake Maye. And honestly, I almost took him over Marvin Harrison Jr. There have been a lot of reports that have come out from notable people in the league that have said the best two quarterbacks in college football were not eligible for the draft this year. That's crazy because they're referring to Caleb Williams and Drake Maye. And
they are.
And this year's class is there. It's not a bad quarterback class. It's not like, it was last year with Kenny Pickett and nobody else really. It was a good quarterback class. So the fact that those two guys are that highly esteemed at this point, it makes things very interesting. All right, this puts me back on the clock. I'm really struggling here because I do think that there's two very good players on the board, but you waxed poetic about Brock Bowers, and I think he's probably the right pick here. Once again, just going with elite talent. We saw him put up nearly 900 yards and 13 touchdowns as a freshman. Absurd numbers. Last year, put up almost 1,000 yards. Slight dip in the touchdown department down to 7, but I mean, he wasn't. It wasn't like he didn't play amazing. Those numbers are incredible just for anyone. So you put all that together, and look, he even ran the ball some. In 2021, 4 rushes for 56 yards and a touchdown, averaging 14 yards a rush. Averaged only 12 yards a rush the year after, which is still amazing. But 9 carries for 109 yards, 3 touchdowns, rushing the football at tight end. Brock Bowers is that guy. I'm a fan. He could be amazing at the NFL level. All right, Dennis.
So
you're on the clock at 1-5.
I've spoken my piece about Brock Bowers. Like he's the kind of tight end that would make even me draft a tight end. I don't know if I draft him at 104, but he's the kind of
you
tight
telling
end
me I should have waited
him
and taken him at 6? Would I still have gotten him?
It would depend a lot on the kind of season some of the running backs or wide receivers have, to be fair.
Sure.
Trayveon Henderson last year. Now, again, there's a lot of Buckeyes on our list because they're good. What are we going to do? It ain't our fault they're always open and scoring touchdowns.
Yeah.
But Henderson was dinged up a lot last year. Didn't hardly play. Mayan Williams carried the load for the most part, and then Dallin Hayden came out of nowhere. So there's some questions about, can Henderson really carry the load? And I think he's going to have to prove that this year. One guy who's shown he can carry the load and doesn't have to prove it is Braylon Allen. The question with him is going to be, he's a big dude. He looks like he could run a 4.65. And if he runs a 4.65, that's going to scare people off, push him down, and probably rightfully so. I mean, you have to have some sort of speed there. A wide receiver I looked at and I really liked, kind of watching. Then he had a down year last year. It was Xavier Worthy. He kind of came out, looked good, then didn't look as good. Michael Penix Jr., the quarterback, it is a super flex draft. And so I end up, kind of looking. That's where I'm going to start my research is the quarterbacks. And so we got Penix Jr., who completed 65% of his passes last year. at Washington, 4,600 yards, 31 touchdowns. You know, Quinn Ewers was a hot name. He came out last year and finally, after spending a redshirt year at Ohio State as a 17-year-old college freshman, he got the job at Texas and then went on to kind of not have a great year, completed 55% of his passes. Now, the team wasn't super good. They relied a lot on Bijan Robinson. All of that being said,
you're stringing me along, aren't you, Dennis?
I am. I think as I look at it, it's still too early on the quarterbacks for me.
Sure.
They haven't established themselves. If Penix has another year like he did last year, then I just have to get over the fact that he's been in college for 6 years. You know, that's gonna be an issue. But I like Hendon Hooker, so I should be able to deal with that. Okay.
Sure.
I'm gonna end up going back to Trayveon Henderson.
Okay.
I expect he's gonna have a really good year this year. Now, the loser in that is going to be Mayan Williams, who came on last year. I think he's going to have to – he's going to get shut out because Henderson is a 3-down back. He's got good size, runs the ball well, can catch the ball, has a nose for the end zone. So I want to try to get a bell cow back. We're at the 105, getting into the middle of the first round. None of the quarterbacks have established themselves yet in my eyes other than Maye, and so until those quarterback up, I'm going to go Trayveon Henderson here.
No, it's a really good pick. I am glad you took him because I was struggling with who to take here with this next pick. So you helped me make that decision. But Henderson, here's the thing about Henderson. He had this rough year last year. Which kind of reminds me of what happened with J.K. Dobbins. Amazing freshman season, rough sophomore year due to a lot of injuries, and moved down a lot of people's boards because of it. Then he came out his junior campaign and looked like the guy that he looked like his freshman campaign. I think we could see very much the same out of Trayveon Henderson. I mean, the kid ran for almost 7 yards a carry as a true freshman, 1,200 yards, 15 touchdowns. And he did it in the receiving game too. 27 receptions, 312 yards, 4 touchdowns. Like, he put up a monster freshman year. And at that point, there were legitimate questions about, is he the best running back in college football or is it Bijan Robinson? Like, that was the question kind of coming in. And obviously Bijan had a fantastic year and Trayveon was banged up. And now he's fallen way down people's boards compared to where he was in Devy circles and things like that. But he's still a hot name, still a great player. I think he is very underrated. A guy that if I'm in a Devy league, I know he's still expensive, but I would try to get now because I think his stock is only going to rise. So big fan of Trayveon Henderson, but that does leave Braylon Allen for me. So I'll take Braylon Allen as well. We know Wisconsin has had a history of churning out these good running backs. And I mean, this dude, he is 6'2", 235 pounds. 2 great seasons, back-to-back years, with over 1,200 yards in both seasons, 12 touchdowns the one year, 11 the other season. So we've really seen it out of him. We haven't seen the receiving game, which isn't a surprise. That's always the knock on Wisconsin running backs is, well, can they do it in the receiving game? I don't know. They don't throw the balls to the running back, so we don't really get to see it very often. But Braylon Allen, I mean, when you talk about somebody that can just carry a team, he is that type of player. He has the good pedigree too. He was a 4-star guy from 24/7 Sports. So it wasn't like he just came out of nowhere. He was expected to be this caliber of player. So really like him. It was thought that even when he was coming out of high school into college, that he might be a linebacker, not a running back. There was thoughts that he might be a linebacker. Well, he ended up being a running back and a pretty dang good one at that. So we got through the first half of our too early mock draft. With that, we had Let me make sure I got it right because I don't have it written down. I should have. That would have been the responsible thing to do. But we had Caleb Williams first off the board, Marvin Harrison Jr. 2, Drake Maye at 3. Then at 4, we had Brock Bowers. At 5, Trayveon Henderson. And then at 6, Braylon Allen. All right, Dennis, you're on the board. Pick 7.
So we're projecting a year
This is
out.
where it gets tough.
One thing we know is there's going to be a quarterback that has a great season this year and flies up the boards. We got some people on our list we're looking at. Michael Penix completed 65% of his passes, 31 touchdowns, 4,600 yards. He's going to be a 6th-year senior. But that being said, he comes with good size, 6'3" listed. So we'll give him 6'2", 212. Good size for a quarterback. If he can put up another season like that, I want to go and find the quarterbacks that I think are going to help me win. And, he doesn't run a whole lot, but it's kind of it's one of those things like CJ Stroud. I've seen some of his games. He played at Indiana, so I got to watch him because watch him play against Ohio State. And he's been pretty good in the face of pressure and, takes his lumps like a man. I think he brings a lot to the table. And so at the 107, I'm going to dip back into the quarterback pool and hope that he produces another good year. I'm going with Michael Penix Jr. out of Washington at the 107.
It's never a bad idea to bank on a quarterback, to go quarterback, because even if he doesn't get first round draft capital, even just second round draft capital or what Hooker got, third round draft capital, those are still valuable assets in Dynasty. So I think that's a good one to take here. Lots of things that to like on his tape. All right, I'm back on the board here. There's a couple guys that I'm leaning toward, but I'm going back to guys. I'm going to take Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State, wide receiver, 6'1", 205 pounds. Had a really solid year as the second fiddle in this wide receiver room. And look, you're saying the second wide receiver off the board is on the same team as the first receiver off the board? Yes, it is. And we've seen this in the past. There are other teams that have had multiple wide receivers on the same team.
Look around the NFL at the Ohio State receivers.
Exactly. Every year there's a great receiver that comes out of Ohio State. And guess what? 2 years ago, or actually this past year, 2 drafts ago, but this past year, the number 1 receiver or rookie of the year, we'll call him, Garrett Wilson, he went to Ohio State. And so did Chris Olave, who had a fantastic season in his own right. So I think it's definitely possible that the 2 best guys at the receiver position in this class are both from Ohio State. And look, Egbuka, he was the number 1 wide receiver in his class coming out of high school. He was the guy. So he's got the pedigree. He's somebody that you can really look at as someone that can work any level of the field. He's got solid hands. He runs solid routes. Like, he's a very safe, solid receiver from a good program. And if I'm drafting guys this early, those are the types of things that I want to bank on, because let's be real, I haven't done deep dives into any of these players, and I won't for months now. But from what I've seen, he's about as safe as they come at this point in the draft. So Dennis, you're back on the clock. You okay with me taking the Buckeye there?
Yeah, I am. I think he put up some great numbers last season, and you've got to take the production. Comes from a pipeline.
All right, who you going with here?
So it's the quarterback hound in me wants to go Quinn Ewers. And if he comes out, he's going to be draft eligible. He's going to be young. he's going to have to put up a season that blows last season away. At 55% completion rate, he's got Arch Manning nipping at his heels. Probably not yet, but Arch is there with symbolic pressure.
Right.
But I'm much like you. I'm going to kind of pivot away from the quarterbacks again, and I'm going to go with Raheem Sanders, running back.
That was my pick.
Out of Arkansas, I believe. Let me find my tab here. Big guy, 6'2", 218 pounds, 225 pounds. He's probably 6'1", 220, which is nice. His nickname is Rock, and so, much more appropriate than a 5'8", 165-pound receiver named Tank. 1,414 yards last season with 28 receptions, scored 10 touchdowns on the ground. I like what he brings to the table. He's another guy that has prototypical 3-down build. It's going to depend on, will he develop into a guy that can play on 3rd down? And as much as we want to look at the pass receiving on 3rd down, it's more often the blocking that the 3rd down guy needs to be able to do. And Sanders has the size to be able to hold up against linebackers and safeties in the occasional defensive end double team. So I'm going to go here with Raheem Sanders.
Yeah, there are some that think Sanders might be the best running back in this class. So, to get him as the 3rd running back off the board, I think is a good value. And you did me dirty though. That was my pick. So now I'm back on the board, and I'm trying to salvage this pick, and I think I am going to go Quinn Ewers. And this is just banking on his development, because right now he does not deserve to be a 1st-round pick in the NFL draft. But we're talking one of the highest graded quarterbacks ever coming out of high school. Left high school early to join Ohio State, which I always thought was kind of odd. Apparently they said it had nothing to do with the NIL, nothing to do with making money, but joining Ohio State, right? Yeah, joining Ohio State that late in the process, he had no chance to win the job. So it was always very odd to me that was the decision that he made. But all of that being said, he has a real shot to be a legit NFL quarterback. This is the risk, and this is the riskiest pick I've made of all of these guys, I think. But I think it's more than worth it when you're looking at a quarterback with his upside at this point. We're at pick 110 here. So I'm good. I'm good taking him there. All right. So Dennis, that puts you back on the clock. And if my calculation in my head is correct, this is your last selection.
It is my last selection. And, there are several players here that fit my ideal prototype at wide receiver. Yep. The one I looking at, which is Johnny Wilson, 7. To be fair, there hasn't been a lot of successful receivers or tight ends at 6'7". So while theoretically it sounds cool, he's not the guy. Other great guys that we got, looking at Xavier Worthy, Rome Odunze, Adson, Troy Franklin, Blake Corum, in our first mock draft we did for the 2022 season before the declaration deadline, Blake Corum actually made it into the 1st round. So he's pretty highly regarded, at least in Dynasty Nerds circles. And then he went back to school. My concern, 5'8", 200 pounds, is that really 5'7" and 190?
Sure.
Probably. And so that's going to really affect, I think, his draft capital. So I'm out on him. I like Xavier Worthy, and he had a really nice freshman year. And like I mentioned earlier, he faded as a sophomore. And he's got the height, 6'1", but he's only listed at 160 pounds. and you can bet on somebody to be the next Devonta Smith. And I don't know that we're there yet. Those seem like generational guys. So I think I might pass there. And I think I'm going to go with Rome Odunze, the wide receiver out of Washington. He's got decent size. He was another guy that we had in our early mock drafts, and then he decided to go back to school. Brings a lot to the table. 200 put up 75 receptions, 1,145 yards. So he's got a nice 15.3 yards per catch average, 7 touchdowns. I think he brings a lot of outside versatility. He's got the size to play outside. He can be a guy that's, a little bit smaller. Cortland Sutton can play downfield. One of those guys that you put on the outside, and he takes that X receiver position.
Yeah, no. Once again, you've done a great job of stealing my players, because I thought for sure you were going to go with somebody else, and he was going to fall to me. And I was like, oh, here we go. Get my boy Rome. That did not happen. So I am going to go with Xavier Worthy then. I think he is, he's got the length. I really do want to see him bulk up. I would like to see that weight higher, because if they're listing him at 163,
somebody needs to take him to a barbecue buffet every day down there in Texas and just, load up on the baked beans and the brisket and the pulled pork, man.
Yeah, cornbread.
Go at it every day.
Yeah. He's a California boy originally, so maybe he hasn't adapted the Texas way of life yet. But yeah, I would love to see him add some weight, but we have the height and we've got the speed. And yes, this year was a down year for Worthy, but still 9 touchdowns. That's a lot of touchdowns in a down season, 760 yards. But when you compare it to his freshman year, 981 yards, so almost 1,000 yards as a true freshman, 12 touchdowns. Obviously, that's, a little bit disappointing. You're hoping for better production there. This is another one that I'm hoping we see him bounce back to what he did as a freshman, because there are a lot of players that we just don't see that all 3 years of production. If you see all 3 years of production and they're elite, then they're going, easily in the top end of the first round. Like, those guys don't come around all the time. Typically, we see either they start off slow and they do well as juniors and seniors, or there's a dip in their production at some point. And that's what we have with Worthy here. He was a very highly regarded prospect coming out, one of the top receivers in his class. So I'm going to lean on the pedigree. I'm going to lean on what he did early on, and I'm going to go with Xavier Worthy as the last pick of our way too early 2024 mock draft. Dennis, did we do well or did we do terrible? People in the chat, tell us what you think. Was there somebody that we missed that we should have had in there? But I think we did pretty good.
I gotta be honest. I'm 100% biased, but I think we crushed it, man. I think we killed it.